Thank you for joining us tonight. I just want to give a quick Wednesday night kind of devotional, very short. Sunday morning, I'm preaching about the road to Emmaus. I'm very excited about that message. We just got through shooting that message in the sanctuary. I think you're really going to enjoy that. The two disciples walking along, and what does it mean when you truly realize Jesus is alive? It changed everything for them. It changed the way they witnessed. It changed the way they looked at the world around them. I think it does the same thing for us. Just past that passage in Luke chapter 24 is one of the funniest scenes, I think, in Scripture. And you say, well, I didn't know Scripture could be funny. I want to tell you something. There's a lot of funny stuff in Scripture when you go in and read it. How would you like for a ghost to show up at dinner time? And imagine what your family would do if they're all gathered around the table getting ready to eat and all of a sudden a ghost showed up. And what if that ghost was somebody you knew and you wouldn't know what to do about it? And that's what happens to the disciples. These two disciples who have been on the road to Emmaus, that they come all the way back from Emmaus. They cover that 7 miles. I imagine they cover it pretty quickly. They get there in time for dinner. All the disciples are gathered around the table. They're getting ready to eat, I think. And there in the midst of them, Jesus shows up. Let's look at this together. It says, now as they said these things, Jesus himself stood in the midst of them and said to them, peace be to you. But they were terrified and frightened and supposing they had seen a spirit. Imagine that. They thought a ghost had just showed up. They think he's dead. They can't get this idea in their mind that he's alive. And so he wants to show them that he's not a ghost, that he's real. Listen to what he says. And Jesus talking here, he says, and he said to them, why are you troubled? And why do doubts arise in your hearts? Behold my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me. See, for a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have. And when he had said this, he showed them his hands and his feet. Now look at this next part. But while they still did not believe, for joy and marveled, he said to them, have you any food here? So they gave him a piece of boiled fish and some honeycomb, and he took it and ate in their presence. It's hilarious. He shows up. They're afraid of him. He says, look, I'm not a ghost. I'm not a haint. I'm not a spirit. Does the spirit have flesh and blood? Look at my hands. Look at my feet. They have the pierce marks of where he just hung on the cross just a few days earlier. And they were excited, but they didn't know whether or not to believe him. They wanted to come close, but they were still afraid of him. He said, why are you still afraid? He said, do you have something to eat? And I love this part. He eats in front of them, and the reason eating was important is this. The thought is that if you're a ghost and you eat something, what? We should all be able to see it go down. But if you're real, it disappears. And because the fish and the honeycomb disappeared, they suddenly started to believe. Let me ask you a question. We just got through celebrating Easter, and so exciting to see God's people worshiping around the resurrection of Christ. But let me ask you the question, has it become real to you? See, it's easy to talk about in Sunday school or in church or when we're all together and you have a group of people, of friends gathered around, they said, hey, do you believe? Oh yeah, I believe. But what happens when a pandemic hits and your kids are looking to you and they ask the question, what about us? Do you believe then? See, if you really believe Jesus is alive, it means that you don't have to be afraid of the pandemic or the virus or the job loss. You don't have to be afraid of anything. Why? Because one that is greater than all the world is in you. Today I want to give you some encouragement. I believe. I know that he's alive. And because of that, we can show the love of Christ to the world around us. So when the kids ask, when the grandkids ask, when your neighbor asks, is that stuff real? You look at him and smile and say, where else could my joy come from? Thank you for joining me today. May God bless.